Hi, I'm Lauren Salaun from the Santa Barbara Business Expo and owner of LMS Creative and Communications. And I'm so excited to be here today with Olga Mizrahi, whose brand new book, Sell Local, Think Global, 50 Innovative Ways to Make a Chunk of Change and Grow Your Business, just came out. And I can say from personal experience, having read it, that this is a must-read for the small business owner, entrepreneur, you name it. It has full of great advice and experiential knowledge from Olga herself for how to transform your business. Now, not only is Olga an author, but she also runs her own full-service creative agency, Oso Design. She blogs regularly at chunkofchange.com, and she's also a regular contributor to the Long Beach Post. Olga, thank you so much for having me today. I am so excited about your book coming out. I know I'm going to reread this probably many times for my own business, but I can imagine how excited you are to finally have it in print and able for the rest of the world to enjoy. Tell me how you're feeling today.
I am elated, excited. I mean, it's a dream come true to be working on this now for a couple years, and here it is finally. It's like giving birth in a weird way.
Now, tell us a little bit about what inspired you to write Sell Local, Think Global.
Short answer, my clients. My clients and the businesses that I've had the privilege to work with over all these years. And when I go out and speak, it's the entrepreneurs and the business owners that I meet, and really understanding that we have a common struggle. And that struggle a lot of times comes down to two things, and that is too much and not enough. This idea of too much email, too much demands on our time, just the idea of keeping up with the change that's presented today. And then not enough, feeling like we don't have enough resources, enough time, and yet somehow we have to deal with this. And so I'm really hoping to take out the overwhelm with these 50 tips and have it add up to a great chunk of change. And a lot of small business, they don't know where to start. I mean, here we are in this day and age of Google and YouTube, and why publish a book? I mean, why even have something like this when all the answers are on Google, right? Why not just go and get it from Google? It's because people have a really hard time understanding where to start and how to make sense of this crazy amount of information that's out there. So I tried to break everything down into these digestible bits that really make a difference for people. And that's why this ended up being a tips book. There's 50 tips in here.
Right. And can you tell us a little bit about what that title, Sell Local, Think Global, 50 Innovative Ways to Make a Chunk of Change and Grow Your Business, about what that means and what readers can expect from this book?
Well, I think that the important part here is that local is no longer about geography. I think that when you think about the type of values that we like about local business, the integrity, the curated specialty, the things that make them unique and interesting, that all of that now is available in a global environment. And even those businesses that did so great on Main Street now have to compete on a global scale. So it kind of goes both ways. The idea that as a very hyper-local business, you can use some of these global tools to grow and to bring people to your local brick and mortar even. And conversely, if you have a particular type of service or product that appeals to a demographic, that same demographic is located in different areas of the country and really the world, and they can come to you for that product. And there's a lot of tools that can bring business to you locally that actually are on a global level. You know, there's a story in my book of a boutique by the name of Orn Hansen that has over 26,000 Instagram followers, and they've done a great job having a brick and mortar, and yet they, like anybody, had a change in their life. They moved to the Portland area from Southern California, and they don't have to start over because they're at a place where they've already got a built-in Instagram following that will help make that transition so much better. So there's an example of a truly local business, but they're local based on their curation of an idea of what that is to be this boutique and curate that.
Much of the knowledge of this book comes from your own experiences. Now, there are 50 tips inside this book, but they all kind of roll up into 10 big ideas. Now, of those 10 big ideas, what would you say was the most challenging for you, or tends to be the most challenging for other business owners?
Yeah, I think that that's a pretty easy one. There is a chapter in the book called Change Your Reviews. There's 5 tips. Do this, not that, what the research says, and a case study in there. And that's the most challenging. The idea of being reviewed, the idea that everyone right now is a critic, and how you deal with that. Putting yourself out there is difficult, and yet you have no choice. About a year ago, I interviewed Yelp for the Long Beach Post. And when I went out there to do this article, I realized really quickly that most small business isn't about how they can use Yelp to their advantage. That's not their first question. Their first question is, how can I turn this off?
Right.
How can I turn this off? How can I just get out of Yelp? I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be open for this criticism. And yet, everyone is a critic. If it wasn't Yelp, then it'd be Google Local. And if it wasn't Google Local, it'd be some crazy blogger. And if it wasn't them, then it'd be, you know, your restaurant reviews on something else. And so it's much more important to understand how to deal with that.
Right. Exactly.
How to live in this new day and age where customer reviews are what people turn to make a business decision.
And how to encourage your spokespeople and your fans to write those reviews.
Your brand ambassadors. You don't have to be a large brand to have a brand ambassador. You have a brand ambassador in your business right now. Someone who is raving about your service, saying how your product is awesome, or even your cause. Someone that has a deep feeling about that cause that you're out there to promote. And so those are your brand ambassadors right now, and that's kind of how it's almost like the antidote to the crazy critic or the troll out there.
Yeah. Now, so the critics and standing up to criticism and not being afraid of that tends to be the most challenging thing for people. What, from your own experience and from others, tends to be the easiest change to make? You know, the idea of what you do best and claiming it, really claiming it. You know, I tell people a lot of times, don't be an better, faster, stronger. A lot of businesses, that's how they describe themselves. But if you're cheaper, are you really Walmart? Because they're the cheapest. You know, if you're friendlier, are you Disneyland? Because that's what people think of as the friendliest place on earth. So those are the things where there's something there, and I know there's something there that uniquely goes with your product, your service, or your cause that you're the best at. You have to be extreme enough to be able to communicate that. And once you realize that, once you have that change in perspective, I'm not saying it's easy, but once you have that change in perspective, I think it can make the biggest amount of difference. As you know, I'm a small business owner myself, and I just started out at this. So what is some advice, one good nugget of advice that you'd give the young entrepreneur? You know, I probably don't even need to give it to you. It's how you're already out there on social. However, here's the thing for the young entrepreneur. You have to be thinking about conversion. So one of the top mistakes that I see is you have this awesome talent, you go put out that YouTube video, you tell all your friends, they're all bloggers, they put it out there, your SEO takes off, everybody comes to your page, and what? Are they there to sign up for your mailing list? You know, how are you going to continue the conversation with these people? What's that next step?
What's the goal?
Exactly.
What's the goal? What are you converting on? So in very, very plain language, right? A conversion, all it is a goal. It's saying, what if I had this many people do this thing? And what that is different for the type of business. So when we look at a website, we might say, hey, if I'm a blogger, a conversion could be that someone's going to be on my site for more than a couple minutes. Right? That might be a conversion. If I'm selling a product, that's pretty easy. E-commerce. How many people put their product in my cart and then check out and give me some money, right? If I'm a cause, how can I get people to feel good about my cause year-round? Share it with their friends. So it could be that a conversion is something shareable. It could be that somebody's spending money on a product, or it could just be time on site. But I think that when you're going out there, the first thing is to know what that's going to be for you.
Right, exactly. Great advice. As a young business owner myself, that was a personal question a little bit. What was one of the most important lessons that you learned as a new business owner or throughout your journey of owning your own business?
I think that one of the most important lessons I learned was from another powerful woman. And it had to do with the idea of you're not thinking big enough, you're not thinking large enough. Kind of now we're kind of used to Oprah saying, dream a bigger dream, once you've had that dream, dream another dream. But I think that having her tell me that, because she was so excited about what I was doing, which in that time was e-commerce. And e-commerce was exciting, granted, in the late 90s. But for her to say to me, this young person, hey, that's awesome what you're doing, you're not thinking big enough. If you were thinking bigger, how would that look? And so I always do that now with my own clients and even with the people that I speak with, because a lot of times I think they shrink who they are, and that's one of the basic premises of unique value proposition, is once you really understand what that is, take it to the extreme, because otherwise nobody's going to pay attention. You know, our brains are wired that way. What's the difference, you know? Spot the difference, that old thing in the newspaper that still exists. So dream a bigger dream.
And now tell us about a lesson that you've learned more recently, or something you learned while writing the book.
It's interesting because there's something about putting yourself out there, especially in the written word. You know, I've helped clients where I have to be in front of them. You know, everybody knows how terrifying it is to make a great presentation in front of an important client, or in my case, I was privileged to be able to be at the California Women's Conference where I spoke in front of hundreds, and yet there was nothing as terrifying as bringing myself into the book to really expose who I am and bring a certain amount of vulnerability. And the lesson really came not that, wow, it's terrifying, but that there's a power in vulnerability, and that is connection. And it's something that before, you know, I would get things on my blog that would be comments like, you're just too smart for your own good. And I'd be like, okay, whatever, dude.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not really sure what that means. But I realized what it was is that there wasn't this way to connect, because there's all this stuff where everything's do this or do that, and here's some advice, and here I am thinking I'm being helpful, but I'm not telling you how I got there. The struggles, or the things that I've witnessed, or the things that I myself have felt.
That humanizing.
That humanizing element where you realize, wow, that's amazing. And of course, there's a famous TED Talk by Brene Brown. And I really identified with it in terms of perfection. And she has this great book called The Gifts of Imperfection. And that tied into some of the way that I wrote here, because I was able to bring some of those pieces out to show you, no, this is not just because of experience or because of something that works. Those are all great and good, but it's also something that I've lived through and I've struggled through, or I've seen others struggle through, and you can come out on the other end. Vulnerability really is a strength, not a weakness. You know, when we think of vulnerability in business, could we think of anything weaker? We don't want people to see us that way, and yet where we are today, and I really credit a lot of social media for this ability, it's really about the imperfection that we have, the gift of imperfection, as Brene Brown would say it. And the idea that vulnerability ends up being connection. And that was something that I learned and made myself more accessible. And I hope to connect with others by sharing some of my struggles and the struggles of people that have been through this journey with me.
In any industry and with any job, it's very important to stay on top of industry trends. How do you stay sharp and stay on top of the latest trends in your industry?
It's a great question, because I think there's a lot of anxiety attached to it. When you become really good at what you do and you're viewed as the person with all the answers, then it's like, what happens when that thing changes in a minute, in an hour, in a day, in a week? And I think that the way that you keep on top of everything is really by surrounding yourself with the resources that keep you informed. I know for me, some of those systems are using a bunch of RSS feeds from my favorite bloggers and news sources through Feedly and also through Flipboard on my iPad. That helps me have my own custom magazine of the newest, and latest, and greatest. You know, TechCrunch might be one of those sources, but really it's an aggregate feed of 100 of those things, all ranging from the very hyper-local person that's here to something as large as CNN. Could you be any more overwhelmed by the amount of information, the crush of information that comes out? And if you've ever taken some time to look at a Twitter dashboard, you pretty much will want to puke if you try to keep up with it. But that in itself, that feeling hasn't changed. When I came to doing web design in the 90s and being kind of one of the first people there doing that, the information that was out there, the amount of it still felt crushing. And everybody would come and be like, how do you keep up? Because you're constantly feeling like you're running behind that train and you can't ever get to the end of it. But really, in reality, Nobody can. And I think that's kind of freeing when you realize that as humans, we have this unlimited potential, and that's awesome. But there's also this idea of limited resources. So we can't ever maximize efficiency, maximize money. You can really only optimize. So there's certain techniques I use, sure. But I think that everybody's going to find their own little way to do it. But I think the first step is to free yourself of the idea that you have to be on top of everything all the time. Mm-hmm. It's okay to ask a question. I would say it's more important to find the resource that's going to support you so that you can almost shortcut it rather than being like, I am the omnipotent Jedi of all internet information. In writing this book, I interviewed dozens of people. And I've worked with hundreds of businesses, and that's all in here. This is not just me saying, this is everything that you need to know.
Now, a quote that you posted on your Instagram page caught my eye recently. It said, "You will never change your life until you change something that you do daily." Now, is there something or even a few things that you changed to your daily routine that you found to be incredibly useful or valuable?
I think this ties into the idea of being creative. And I think it also expands the idea of art. Mm-hmm. So one of my favorite authors, SETH GODIN, talks about art, but really art as business. Mm-hmm. Art as what your unique contribution is that you bring to the table, and that there's this creative problem solving, and it can be kind of messy sometimes. So I think one of the most important changes that I've made on a daily, weekly basis is creating the room. Creating the room. And what does that mean? It can mean different things to different people. Maybe for somebody it's their yoga class or meditation or being able to talk to a friend. For me, it's taking a business associate out on the water and having what we call a board meeting on our stand-up paddle boards. Because by the time I come back to the office and I'm ready to sit down and think creatively about something or a problem that I'm trying to put together, my brain makes those connections a lot more readily. I'm in flow, as opposed to just powering through, grind it out, 12 hours later, and I'm just mush. So again, the most effective change that I've made in my day is having those times where it's downtime. It's really the idea of creating room for those creative connections to form in my brain.
You have your own creative agency, Oh So Design. Now, I've read a lot of things about the creative process, and as a creative person myself, I've heard that to really spark your creativity, it's good to have a set routine to really get you in that creative mindset, whether that's the same type of tea at the same time while listening to the same song, to really get you in that mode. Do you have a routine like that, or something that really helps you to get into that creative place?
Most small business owners that I know and entrepreneurs, there's something about their day that changes every day.
Right, exactly.
The most challenging part for entrepreneurs and small business owners is not discipline, it's not routine, it's not a lack of ideas, it is the whirlwind. It is the thing that sweeps you up, and your to-do list and the things that I have to do, and it's so overwhelming, and I don't know where to start, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So, yes, I would say wonderful if you can come to your desk every day and have your tea and not touch your email for the first however long. That's all great. I will tell you what I do. There's a system that I have, and I think, again, systems are awesome because you can build efficiencies. Like when I interviewed John Lee Dumas of Entrepreneur on Fire, eofire.com, he's amazing. He puts on these podcasts every day. Who else does a podcast every day with a well-known entrepreneur? Well, he has a system for doing that. He does the whole broadcast or recording process on Mondays. He does the whole thing on Monday, and he does 8 of them. So he has one extra in the can, and they're all live, and they're barely edited. I mean, they are edited. I don't want to say that, John. But, like the idea that he created that system for himself, and then that frees up other time. He's not getting sucked into that whirlwind, right?
Right.
My version of that is a series of schedules that I have. So I have the external brain, otherwise known as my phone and my calendar on my phone. And then I have a weekly view. So I can see pretty much about a week out. And of course I have longer term views too. I know if I have a speaking event in January, I have to prepare a deck for the speaking event in January. But because things change so quickly today and priorities shift, I think there has to be a system in place that allows you to optimize your time and make room for the things that are truly important in your life. If you don't make time for creativity in terms of problem solving, I don't care if you can't draw a stick figure, but you're a business owner, so you problem solve all the time. There's something that has to help you get there on a regular basis. So if that's your tea and meditating and yoga for you, awesome. For me, it's a little bit different. It's creating the room for that creative time, that creative space, so that my brain can come back and make those connections. And it's also the systems, a series of schedules that are helping me along. You can have everything in the world to make yourself more efficient with all those, but I don't think you'll get very far if you don't have the support system that it takes to get you there. And that could be the people on your team, your alliances, your family, new connections that you make. You know, one of the reasons that I wrote this book was I was inspired by the interaction and the comments and the things that come through the blog and through Long Beach Post.
We touched on it a little bit, and the idea of a typical day or a set routine for the small business owner is an anomaly or a joke sometimes.
Yeah.
But are there things that you do every day or during the week that remain consistent almost every week, aside from like regularly scheduled calls with clients, that sort of thing?
Sure. OSA design is my day job, so my clients come first. There is a certain amount of communication, project management, creative work. All those things have to be moved along on a regular basis, and there are project schedules for all that stuff. But outside of that, just as a small business owner, for me, the only time that I have, I think, that I can consistently do something like work out is in the morning. So at 5:30 in the morning, if you guys want to join me, I'm at the beach with a group of moms, and we do something called shred.
Nice. Sounds intense.
You know, but that's me. That doesn't mean that you have to do that. Again, it all depends what it is that gives you that, and I don't want to say balance because I think that's a misnomer, but gives you that room, gives you the ability to move towards whatever goals are important for you.
Now, much of the knowledge that is in this book, I'm sure, has come from being asked many of the same questions over and over again. What are some of the questions that you continue to hear from entrepreneurs or small business owners?
Without a doubt, the number one question that everyone always has is how to grow sales, or how to grow as a business, how to get more people in the door, how to make more money, right? Because those are the struggles that it comes down to. And yet, the number one way to remedy that a lot of times is to give an answer to why choose you. That's not an easy thing to do. That's why this book starts out with the idea of unique value proposition. You know, I'll give you a great example. There's a pediatric clinic called Growing Healthy Together, and they are just the bomb. And they've been growing amazingly to the point where now the main owner has, in essence, replaced himself with other caretakers that are there in order to be able to take on more patients. But a year ago, he was sitting in his office going, okay, why don't I have patients from 1 to 5? You know, he's at a different spot now. He's saying, my wife's telling me when I'm going to actually come home and be home on a weekend. That's a different problem.
Exactly.
You know, some people would say that's a good problem to have. But it took a while for people to recognize who he was, to be able to give him the accolades and the reviews on Yelp, to get found through SEO or through content on his blog that sets him apart from other pediatric providers. Namely things like he will, like space-apart vaccines, for instance. Or he has certain views on alternative practices. So that sets him apart from the traditional pediatric clinic. But that doesn't mean that he put that all out there and day one everybody was pounding down his door.
Right, exactly.
But they are now.
Great.
Yeah.
You're a small business owner with a great team who's been working with you for several years. What are some characteristics or things that you look for when thinking about adding somebody to that team?
They have to know how to kiss ass really well. No, I'm kidding. We're in an interesting place when it comes to finding help. And I do not think finding good help is hard. I don't. I think that you just aren't looking in the right place if that's what's happening. There are people that I've known for years through certain connections, networking, whatever it is. And some of it's timing. Some of it's when my favorite writer is available after a stint. And some of it is a surprise alliance that then gets folded into the team. So years ago, Oso Design did a project for Sunnyland Pictures. They came to us because they liked that we used video at all, right? But in getting to know them through the project, they are my #1 resource now for story producing and for video. Okay. And so I feel like they're an extension of the team here at Oso Design. So sometimes it's actually bringing people into the fold like in-house. But I think for a small business, more likely it's those alliances and those win-win situations where you feel like, wow, you are so awesome at what you do. You are the best. I want that for me. I want that for my clients. But I don't have to be the expert of that. I don't have to be the boss of that.
The Santa Barbara Business Expo is on April 25th, and you spoke at the first one way back when, and you will be a speaker at this year's Expo as well. Can you tell us a little bit about the experience of speaking and attending the Expo and why folks should go to it and what they'll get out of it?
You know, Santa Barbara is such a unique community, and there's so many great small businesses and service providers in Santa Barbara. And the one thing that I think unites Santa Barbara is just they have a very strong passion for the community, this beautiful place, and whatever causes are so great to them. I think that the one thing that I saw at the Santa Barbara Business Expo the first time that I spoke was that wanting to connect as a small business to other people that share those values in your community. And that's where I think that small business, sometimes it's so hard because you're dealing with the whirlwind, right? To connect and to see, gosh, how about this alliance here? That might lead to more business or more referrals or whatever that is. Last time at the Expo, I spoke a lot about what makes you different, and I want to hear more about that from you, and I would love to meet you at the Expo and get to know more about your business.
Olga, it's been such a pleasure. I have found this incredibly valuable, and I'm sure our viewers will too, and anybody who will be attending the Santa Barbara Business Expo will, I'm sure, learn a ton from your speaking session. So thank you again for having me so much. And everybody out there watching, Sell Local, Think Global is available everywhere. Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, and even your local bookstore. It's in bookstores nationwide, so go out and grab yourself a copy today and start transforming your business now.